Hello children, welcome to the geography class. So in this class, we shall discuss about the remaining part of the chapter, that is chapter 11, water resources. In the previous class, we had discussed about conventional method of irrigation, in which we discussed in detail about well irrigation. Today in this session, we shall discuss about tank irrigation, inundation canals and modern method of irrigation. So let's start with tank irrigation. Tank irrigation refers to a small bunch of earth or stones built across a stream to impound water, which is then led through narrow channels to the cultivated fields. That means tanks are constructed in the areas of natural depression by building earthen embankment or masonry walls to collect water. This water is used in dry season. Tank irrigation is useful in the areas which are dependent on rainfall for their water supply. In India, about 12% of the total irrigated area is done by the tanks. Tanks are used mostly in Peninsular India, where the underlying hard rocks do not allow the water to seep through. Tank irrigation is very popular in the Peninsular Plateau region, especially in the areas of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana and Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, it is significant in the district of Chinglapet, North Arcot and South Arcot, Nellore in Andhra Pradesh and Warangal in Telangana. Some irrigation tanks do exist in Bundelkhand area in Uttar Pradesh and South Bihar. Following are the advantages of tank irrigation. First one, seasonal rainfall. Tank irrigation is effective in the places where there is seasonal rainfall, especially in the Peninsular Plateau of India. Hard rocky terrain. The hard rocks in the area do not absorb water, so wells and canals cannot be constructed. Hence, only tank irrigation is feasible. Storing the abundant rainfall. Tanks are useful in collecting surplus rainwater which will otherwise flow into the sea. Extra income to the farmers. Fishing in the tanks is an additional activity which provides not only food for the farmer's family but also gives extra income to the farmer. Now let's see the disadvantages of tank irrigation. Fails to supply water for irrigation. During the dry season, most of the tanks dry up and fail to supply water for irrigation. And we know that rainfall in India is seasonal, irregular and uncertain. As and when the monsoon fails, the tanks dry up and are not dependable at that time. The tanks get silted up. Over a period of time, the tanks get silted up and thus require regular desilting. Water evaporates or sinks. Due to large surface area of shallow tanks, much water from the tanks is evaporated and thus lost. Developed over a large area of land. Most of the tanks have been developed over a large fertile area, which otherwise should have been used for growing crops. Tank irrigation is costly. Sometimes the lifting of water from the tanks for irrigation and bringing it to the farms is not only costly but also difficult. Tanks are non-perennial. Most of the tanks are non-perennial and becomes dry during the winter and summer seasons, when water is urgently required for rabi and zaid crops. In the Peninsular Plateau region, tanks are still an effective way of collecting the rainwater. Most of the state governments are providing loans for the construction of new tanks and repair of the old tanks. This will help in popularizing tank irrigation, aquaculture, water sporting, fishing and supply of water for domestic needs. Now let us discuss about canal irrigation. Canals were the most important source of irrigation in India up to 1960. But in 1970, canal irrigation lost its importance to well and tube well irrigation. Today, canals are the second largest source of irrigation in India. India has one of the world's largest canal system, stretching over more than 1 lakh kilometers. There are two types of canal irrigation in India: perennial canals and inundation canals. The canals which flow throughout the year are known as perennial canals. These canals are taken out from the perennial rivers. Perennial rivers means rivers which flows throughout the year. By constructing barrage. Barrage refers to artificial barriers or dams to regulate flow of water. They can draw water throughout the year and irrigate large area. Most of the canals in India belong to this category. Next is inundation canals. These canals are taken out directly from the rivers without constructing any barrage or dam. Such canals use the excess water of rivers at the time of floods and remain operational during rainy season. As the bed of these canals are at a level higher than those of the rivers, they get supply of water only when the rivers are in flood. Therefore, these canals have limited use. Following are the advantages of canal irrigation. Provide perennial irrigation. Most of the canals in India provide perennial irrigation and saves the crop from drought conditions. Very cheap source of irrigation. The canals, which are part of multi-purpose river valley projects, are very cheap source of irrigation. Although the initial expenditure for digging a canal is very high, but it is quite cheap in the long run. Add to the fertility of soils. The sediments brought by the canal water are deposited in the fields and thus add to the fertility of soils. Canal irrigation is helpful in arid areas. In the areas of little rainfall, such as in Rajasthan, the canal irrigation has helped in farming and yielded good production. Summer season is dry in Tamil Nadu and the crops are raised with the help of canal irrigation. Now let's see the demerits or disadvantages of canal irrigation. Waterlogging. Waterlogging is generally experienced along the canal routes. This is due to seepage of water from the canals. Second is excessive flow of water. The excessive flow of water in the fields through irrigation can raise the level of groundwater. Over a period of time, this causes high concentration of salt in the soil. Overflow their banks. During the rainy season, the canals can overflow their banks and water can cause floods in the surrounding areas. Canal irrigation is in practice in Uttar Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan, Haryana, Jammu and Kashmir, Assam and Tripura. Canal irrigation also supplies a sizable part of the irrigated area in Bihar, Odisha, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal and Mizoram. The least irrigated state is solely dependent on canals. The northern plains have elaborate system of canals. The conventional irrigation systems suffer from a number of constraints leading to improper utilization of water, and they are as follows. Water is not properly utilized. In the conventional system of irrigation, a large quantity of water is not properly utilized. Flooding. Crops are usually subjected to cyclic changes of flooding and water stress situations. By providing heavy irrigation at one time and leaving the fields to dry up for about 10 to 15 days results in poor yields in the crop. The prolonged water logging. The fields situated in low-lying areas always get excessive water, causing prolonged water logging. Thus, crops are subjected to water logging results in poor yield. Decreases effective area of cultivation. In the fields, about 10 to 15% of the land is used for preparing channels and distribution, which decreases effective area of cultivation. Next, we will discuss about modern method of irrigation. The drawbacks of conventional method of irrigation have led to the utilization of modern irrigation methods, which are highly scientific. Some of the important ones are as follows. Furrow irrigation. It is a type of irrigation by which water runs in furrows between the crop rows. That means the water poured on the field is directed to flow through narrow channels dug between the row of crops instead of evenly distributing the water throughout the whole field. Furrow irrigation is useful in the areas where water is easily available. Next is spray irrigation. In spray irrigation system, a long hose is set to a water source on one side, and on the other side the water is released through spray guns to the fields. The spray irrigation is expensive as it requires complex machineries, but utilizes water more efficiently, reducing the amount of water needed to irrigate a field. Next is drip irrigation. Drip irrigation is the most advanced and efficient method of irrigation. In drip irrigation, water is taken directly to the roots of the plants or trees. A plastic tube is used which has small holes through which water keeps on dripping steadily. Hence the name drip irrigation is given to this type of irrigation. Next is sprinkler irrigation. In this method of irrigation, a pipe fitted with a nozzle on the top is used, through which water is sprayed directly to the required plants. It is often referred as overhead irrigation method. This method is very expensive and it is helpful for small areas which requires less water. So children, here I complete your water resources chapter. If you have any doubt, feel free to clarify. Thank you.